Hello, my beautiful witches. Wicked Witch of LA here with another video. Shocker. Now, today, as you can see by the title, I want to talk about jar spells and kind of the basics of constructing and activating your jar spells. Now, jar spells are extremely common nowadays, and they're used so much in almost any magical walk. People use jar spells for whatever reason. Jar spells do have a pretty long history, and they've been used very differently depending on the culture and the magical path that they come from. So you can trace jar spells all the way back to ancient Egypt. Again, and pretty much any culture in the world has used a jar spell in one way or another, and they've been used for reasons of like granting wishes, trapping spirits, releasing curses. They've been used to hold household blessings and things like that. They've also been used as offerings to certain gods and goddesses and spirits. And today we see jar spells used a lot more in the sense of being used to obtain our goals, our wishes, and our petitions that we put up to the gods and goddesses or the universe, whatever you believe in. So today I kind of just want to talk about the basics of jar spells and how you can go about it and have a successful spell. Now, there are 3 steps in jar spells that I personally believe to be very successful, or if done properly, successful, and that is construction, activation, and feeding. So we're going to go over those right now. And real quick, with your jar spells, you don't have to break the bank for these. If you did watch my 10 tips for beginner witches, there is a tip on there where I talk about you don't need to break the bank. Please go to your local dollar store, your local thrift store. You're going to find jars like these that are so cheap. So look over there. They come in different sizes. I mean, I have jars of all shapes and sizes. Now, to go on with the first step, construction. Now, when you're constructing your jar, you definitely want to firstly have a good reason behind it. Now, that means you want to have a clear intent, a purpose, and a goal that you want to see for your spell as a result of. So what does that mean? Let's say you're doing a prosperity jar. I'm going to show you mine. So this is my personal prosperity spell jar that I have here. It's full of stuff. There may be bones in there. I'm not going to say. But you really want to know what you're doing your jar for. If, for example, for my prosperity jar, when I made a prosperity jar, it's not because I want prosperity. No, like you really need to be specific with your jars. Every witch at one point will make a prosperity jar, but you need to know why you want prosperity in your life. What does prosperity mean? That doesn't always mean money. Ooh, there we go. That doesn't always mean money. Prosperity has so many different meanings behind it, and you really want to be specific with what you want. So it's very important that when you're writing out your petition for your jar spell, to be very detailed on what you want to achieve with it. And it's also very important that when you're writing your petition for your jar spell, you want to write it as if you've already achieved your goal. So if my prosperity jar is for me to be debt-free and to have a good income, I'm not going to write my prosperity or my petition as I hope or I pray that I get this. If things go well, maybe I'll get this. You really want to be affirmative with what you want out of your spell. So it's going to be I wish, I hope, versus I have, I've achieved, I'm receiving. So when I did my prosperity gel, one of my prayers that I did over it was I am prosperous, I am debt-free, my debt is wiped out, and I have a good, steady income. You want to be affirmative with your jar spell. You want to be specific, and you want to know exactly what you want and how you want it. Now, again, when you're constructing your jar, you can use any container that you want. And I mean any. I have these wee little tiny ones. Again, I think there was a pack of like 3 of these for $1 at the dollar store. If you are in Los Angeles, I highly recommend the Dollar King. I know there's one in Glendale. I'm not really sure where the other ones are, but I know there's a few in LA. So if you're in LA, check out the Dollar King in Glendale. They have awesome jars there. That's where I get all my mason jars like these. I found this one the other day at a thrift store for 99 cents. And then this was just an old salt container. So you can definitely reuse jars that you find in your kitchen. So if you have a jar that had pickles, yeah, pickles work. And let's say if you've already finished and you've emptied out, just give it a really good clean because you don't want your spell to smell like pickles. No. Just clean it out, and of course you can reuse that. And sometimes you'll even find really cool shaped jars, like this one. It's a skull shape, and I like using these for baneful magic. So whenever I'm doing hexes, this does work well with it. And these skull ones are actually really good for working with the ancestors or the spirits of the dead. If you're working with La Santísima Muerte, hey, you got something with a skull on it. Might work. So when you're constructing your jar spell, one of the first things that you want to know is what you're going to be putting into your jar. And you can really put anything you want into your jar. And this can range from herbs, crystals, stones and sticks and dirt that you find out in your walks. You can use certain household items, charms that you may have, wax drippings. I mean, I have here, this is actually my bone tossing bowl, but I have a couple items in here that you could use, a scorpion amulet. If I'm using something for protection, or if I'm doing a baneful magic, I can use like a scorpion charm. I mean, I have bones, sticks, again, herbs, little charms. I have seashells and crystals in here. There's a lot of things that you can put into your jar, and it's really up to you what you want. But you want to make sure that regardless of the herb, the crystal, whatever it is, that it has a reason behind it. You need to know the purpose behind every ingredient that's going into your jar spell. And the reason that is because you want to give the universe, your gods and goddesses, very clear instructions on what you want to achieve. If you're just throwing things in here for the sake of it to fill up space, you do risk your spell going awry and things not manifesting the way you want, or even just not manifesting at all. So you want to make sure that everything that you put into your jar while you're constructing it has a purpose. Now, one of the things that I put in here is my petition. I do roll it up in a little scroll, and boop, it goes inside. Now, if you do need some things for, let's say you're making a prosperity jar, some things that you can put in there are dollar bills, which I do have in here, and coins as well. I did mention earlier, just a few seconds ago, that you can do like stones, twigs, and dirt that you find outside. Little tip for you. If you're doing a prosperity or a money jar, use bank soil. And I mean like the soil that is at your bank. You know how sometimes they have like plant pots or like, plantings outside? If there is soil in that little property that belongs to the bank, take some. Leave an offering, to the earth as a thank you, and use it. Banks are money magnets. It's money increase. Banks do nothing but rake money in. So I put that energy into my jar to really bring in the cash. So yeah, you can definitely use things like that. Dirts, cool twigs that you found. Maybe you found a really cool rock and you feel like there's a lot of power coming from it. Well, 100%, you can put that into your jar. Now, other things that you can put into your jar is wax drippings. Sometimes I'll take wax from other spells that I've used. For example, let's say this is green wax from another money spell I did. Sometimes I'll actually use these wax chips and I'll put them into my jar. It's remnants of my money spell, not this red one exactly, but for example, you can do things like that 100%. And it doesn't just have to be what goes in your jar. You can also put things outside of your jar. So for me, as you can see, I do have some sigils on the outside. I'm not sure if you can see it that clearly, but I also do, have some words on there that I wrote on my jar with marker. You can definitely do that. And sometimes you can even tape things. So this right here, this is the second pentacle of Jupiter, if I'm not mistaken. And this is all about acquiring riches, wealth with ease of mind. And that's a big one, ease of mind. So I drew this on a piece of paper and I taped it onto my jar. That's definitely something that you can do. If you don't have a marker that will write on glass or on the container that you're using, you can definitely write something out and tape it right on. And a little thing with your jar is that if you're doing something in your jar to attract, always put a protective element into your jar. For me, I did put in a protective stone, but it could be anything that you see as protective, whether it's a pentacle, a cross, a symbol of your deity, whatever it is that you feel most comfortable with and that will give you that protection that you need, because you always want to keep your work safe. So again, you can put anything you want in your jar as long as it corresponds to your intent. And be creative with this process. And I mean like be creative. There are so many recipes online for different types of jar spells. Prosperity, for example, you will find hundreds of recipes. But make something unique. Make something that's your own and be creative. Have fun with it. The construction part of the jar should be something that you enjoy making, especially if it's something that you want to attract into your life. So be creative. You can use whatever you want. I've even in the past have printed out tarot cards. We'll print them out, a photo online. I'll cut it up, charge it, and then boop, into my jar. If you're doing a prosperity jar, I recommend the Ace of Pentacles. Anything in the Pentacles will work really. But I recommend highly the Ace of Pentacles, the 8, and the 10 of Pentacles. Those are all amazing when you really want to draw in the energy from those cards to get more money and more financial and mundane prosperity into your life. And you can just roll that up and stick it right in here. So again, be creative and have fun with the construction process. Now, the second part to a jar spell is activation. So the first part was construction, and now we have activation. When you are activating your jar spell, you are essentially releasing exactly what you want into the universe. Whether it's to the universe that you're praying to, gods, goddesses, spirits, ancestors, God, I don't know, whatever you want. So the activation process really is just that. And there are so many different ways of doing it. Now, my personal way of doing it is to get either a tea light or a taper candle, and I'll place it right on top of my jar. And as I light my candle, I'll say my prayers or my mantras over my jar. If I'm doing prosperity work, it'll be something as simple as prosperity come to me, my debt is free, my debt is paid, and I have a steady inflow of money. So mote it be, amen, whatever you want. And that's really what the activation process is. You're just activating it. So you can do a candle. Other ways that I've activated jars in the past is I'll just give it a good shake. And as I'm shaking it, I'll usually visualize exactly what I'm trying to manifest as I'm shaking it. Another way that I've done this is simply by breathing on it is, I'll do my prayers and then just that breath is really important. That's known as the breath of life, or the witch's breath of life. And that will charge anything with your own personal energy, with your own life force. It's very powerful to do that. So you can definitely do that with your jar, especially, if it's something personal. If it's a personal jar, that breath of life, let me tell you, it will do wonders for you. And another way that I've used to activate my jar spells, and I do this more for jars that are long, they have a long-term goal, or maybe they're just bigger workings, is that I'll actually bury this. So I do have a plant pot that I got at a dollar store, and I filled it with, you can fill it with dirt or soil, whatever you want from the earth, and you can actually just bury it into the soil, cover it, and you can leave it overnight, 3 days. You can do it on, under a full moon. And that's a way of the earth empowering your jar. And as it comes out, your jar has been birthed into life. And it's been empowered by the earth, by its energies, by its life. So that's a very, very, very powerful way of activating your jar spells. Of course, you're more than welcome to create your own way, especially if it's if it's a jar that you're creating for yourself. Find your own unique way of activating the jar. And you've done it right because you'll feel it. You'll feel the energy. You'll feel something tingly. Something warm. I don't know. It changes. It varies from person to person, but you'll definitely feel it when you've done it. Now, activation, again, is a pretty short spot. So the next point in working with jar spells is feeding. So the first one was construction. We have activation and feeding. And feeding is the lengthiest part of your jar spell. And what feeding your jar spell means, it's basically the continuous work that you're putting into your jar to keep the work going, to keep the energies flowing. If I'm doing a prosperity jar, for example, for my own, which is this one right here, every single week, at least once a week, I'll try to do it, maybe twice, but at least once a week, I'll light a candle over my jar. Pretty much what I did to activate it. I'll light a candle over my jar, and as it burns down, I'll do those same prayers, those same mantras over my jar. And again, I try to do that at least once a week. Another tip, if you're trying to do prosperity work, Thursdays, which are ruled by Jupiter, are the best days to do any prosperity work. But again, I'll do that every week. And the reason you want to keep the work going is because jar spells tend to be used more for long-term spells. It's something that you don't just want one, it's not a one and done type of thing. It's something that's used over the course of time. And that takes work. You need to keep the work going. I have had witches message me and say, Wicked, I did my spell, I did my jar spell, and it's just not working. What do I do? And I ask them, how often are you doing your jar spell? They're like, well, I did it once and then I put it away. How long ago was that? Well, it's like about 2 months ago. Listen, my beautiful witches, you need to put in the work. You need to put in the effort. This isn't a one and done deal. When you're doing jar spells, you need to have a weekly feeding for your jar, at least once a week. And it doesn't have to be jars, again, lighting candles. You don't have to bury it for 3 days. It's as simple as just shaking it for a bit. And again, visualizing, just breathing over it. It can literally take you 1 minute to feed your jar. Of course, the more time you dedicate to it, the better. It's better to have a consistent schedule. That's what I personally found to be the best. Don't obsess over it either. But find a weekly schedule or a time to set aside to sit with your jar and feed it with some energy. Again, that's what keeps the motion going. That's what keeps that energy working, because jars take time. And sometimes as witches, especially younger witches, I'm young. I'm not going to say my age, but I'm young. I have a lot of experience, but I'm a very impatient person. And I've noticed a lot of new witches are very impatient with their magic. So I'm telling you right now, my beautiful witches, if you're new, or even if you're not new and you've done jar spells and they're not working immediately, that's because they take time. And you need to be patient. You cannot just do the working once and expect the universe to give everything to you on a silver platter. You've got to work weekly at it. If you're doing a prosperity jar, and let's say you are doing your weekly things, but in the mundane life, you're spending all your money on Barbies and hot dogs, I don't know, and you're not spending your money wisely, you're not saving money, you're taking too much time off work, you're not getting the hours, you're not working as much because you just don't want to. Like, come on. No. Magic is not your butler. Magic is not a vending machine where you stick a quarter in it once and it spits out whatever you want. That's not how this works. You need to put in the work. You need to put in the effort, not just in the jar, but towards the goal that you want to receive. If you're doing a healing jar and let's say you're trying to heal 3 years worth of trauma, of hurt, from a toxic relationship, this ain't going to work overnight. If you're dealing with 3 years worth of hurt, it's not going to take a day or a week to heal that. You need to put in work. And aside from a jar, you need to do things to help yourself, get mental help, do some meditation, look for some services around your city that can help you. I'm not a doctor or anything, so, do your own research. But you need to put in the work in the feeding process. You really need to put in that work, okay? Or else it ain't gonna work. So, those are the 3 main steps in creating your jar spell. Now, let's say you're done with your jar spell and you think it's time to get rid of it. Well, there's a couple ways of doing that, and easy ways is just bury it somewhere. If you're taking a jar and let's say for example, my prosperity jar, and I already got what I want, sometimes I'll just take it out into the woods and I'll just bury it and just leave it there and I won't really look back at it. You can take out the objects that you had inside. Let's say that you used some crystals. Let's say that you used some, I don't know, like some dollar bills for prosperity work. You can definitely pull those out and use them again for whatever you want. Usually with herbs, I don't do that because they're already like all mixed in and I won't reuse them. So usually my herbs I'll burn as a thank you to my gods and goddesses, or I'll just bury them as well. Though that's one of my recommendations of disposing your jar. If you did a baneful jar, a jar, whether it was a curse, a hex, or any form of baneful magic, do not reuse it. I don't care how good you sage it, which by the way, sage won't always work with breaking spells and it's not really great for breaking spells. So little tidbit right there. If you use a jar for doing baneful magic and you think it's already done its job and you're done with it, take it somewhere, preferably farther away from where you live, bury it, and just don't return to that spot. Baneful magic is very heavy, it's intense, It's strong. You want to be careful with it. So don't use it, okay? Or don't reuse the jar. All right, my beautiful witches, that is pretty much it for today. I hope I didn't ramble too much or go too fast, but I really just wanted to give you the basics on how to construct, how to activate, and how to feed your jar. If you have any questions, of course, you're more than welcome to leave me a comment down below or just message me on my Instagram at WickedWitchofLA. There are so many, to wrap things up, there are so many different types of jars out there, and I will be posting videos later on different types of jar spells that you can do, from vinegar jars, protection jars, witch bottles, hexing. I'll even do a video on curse jars and hexing jars, things like that. But just remember, overall, this is your jar. This is your spell. Make it personal. Be creative. Enjoy the process. Put in the work, put in the time and the effort, and you'll see that the universe, the gods and goddesses are going to bless you. They have blessed me so many times, time and time again. They'll do the same for you. Again, if you have any questions, please leave me a comment down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the video. That helps me big time. And if you don't follow me on Instagram, I don't know what you're doing with your life, but you should head over to Wicked Witch of LA and hit that follow button. All right, my beautiful witches, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I hope you are having a safe and wonderful evening wherever you are. And as always, blessed be. Good night. I did my camera kind of weird, so I actually have to get up and move and turn it off. So enjoy the last 3 seconds of this video, all right?